Hey gang, John Backrella here with your Lake St. Clair Fishing Report, brought to you by Sportsmen's Direct. It's Thursday, June 5th, and I know I said last week that we'd probably be doing these on Wednesday, but it looks like right now we're going to keep doing them on Thursdays because my son's schedule officially hasn't changed yet, so we're going to keep doing these on Thursday. Water temp at Belle Isle is back up to 61 degrees. Was 58 last week, so back up to 61 now, which is about as high as it's been so far this spring, which is a good thing. So, but it's making things a little bit difficult for everybody with this, this kind of this lag that we have this year in the back and forth thing. Shallows are even higher on the lake now, so haven't really had any onshore winds and warm temps at the same time to stack that warm water up, but I'm sure the shoreline areas along the lake, especially over the next couple of days, and I'll get to that in a second, are going to warm up even more, just because we've got nice stable temps, highs in the 70s and lows in the 50s, and my whole routine, right, where you take the two, add them together, divide by 2, and then that tells you whether you're going to get a heating degree day or a cooling degree day. Looks like we pretty much got heating degree days going forward relative to the temps that we're at right now. So slow, steady, gradual warm up, nothing crazy. And what's happening is I don't know if I said it in the last video or not, but I was talking about the mayflies, and they should be coming, and if it hadn't cooled off, they would have hatched already. My buddy Phil walked into the store just the other day and took a picture, showed me a picture anyways of what happened on his walk down at the point at Metro. He takes a walk every day down there, and mayflies. So the mayflies did come ashore down there, and I've had reports from other guys that are been out in their boats that are starting to see the mayflies hatch. And this is a little bit later than what we normally see them. I know they call them mayflies, but honestly, they generally hatch in, towards the end of May going into June. So they are a little bit behind. Normally we've got a good steady hatch going by this point of the year, and they are really just getting going now. So, but let's look at the weather this week real quick, or let's look at for the next several days. The weather forecast looks amazing. Haven't been able to say that, and I don't know that we've been able to say that all spring, but the weather report really looks good for the next several days, regardless of what you're going to do on the water. It looks like relatively light winds and just really nice mild conditions. Should have plenty of sunshine. Don't see any big blows in the forecast, and we just don't see any extreme weather coming in at all. So it looks like very stable conditions, which should mean very stable fishing conditions for everybody out there. And it will probably mean the lake is going to clean up significantly, and we'll have to pay attention to that because that's going to change things around a little bit. Right now, there's quite a bit of color out there in the lake, although I wouldn't call it dirty by any stretch of the imagination, but I can't get you a good satellite image because it's just been we just haven't gotten a good one. I had an almost decent satellite image, but there was some kind of weird reflection going on, and it may be from all that smoke from those Canadian wildfires or something, but you really couldn't get, it was kind of deceiving. So I'm not going to share it with you here in this video because it's just kind of weird looking and funky. You can't really tell much by it, but just know that the lake is going to clean up a lot over the next several days. At least I would expect it to. So let's get back. Well, let's talk a little bit about the weather too. Over the next couple of days, it looks like we're going to have a light easterly breeze. And I say that not because I'm afraid it's going to tear things up or that it's going to be a bad east wind and make it rough or anything like that. I say that to go back to the whole mayfly thing, because if that mayfly hatch keeps going out there on the lake, even if it's a kind of a minor hatch, if we get a light onshore breeze, especially in the evenings, it'll bring all those mayflies ashore, and then you guys will all get to really see them. Now, there's something you do need to understand is just because we don't get mayflies on shore doesn't mean that they're not hatching out there. Once this hatch gets going, it's going to affect the fish, their feeding patterns, and how you should be planning your days out there on the lake, because these fish are going to key on that mayfly hatch. It becomes a big deal because the bait fish are involved in the feeding frenzy, and then all the other different species out there take a part in it based on what's going on out there in the lake. And with that if we do get a light east wind and it brings those mayflies ashore, it kind of impacts, even for you shore fishermen, some of the opportunities that you're going to have. Now, with the smallies, this top water bite has already started with the mayfly hatch, and it's just gonna get more and more pronounced. And that's whether you're fishing shallow or whether you're fishing out deeper, when we get these slicks that'll start to form out there with the casings, or out in these areas where the mayflies are actively hatching. So these mayflies are going to be in the softer bottom areas, and a lot of times that also is associated with areas where there's going to be weed growth as well. So you can kind of find those areas based on the bottom content, based on the weeds. Anyways, it's just, that's kind of the biology of what's going on out there. So those two are associated with each other, and I'll talk about them a little bit as I go through the different species. But with the smallies, things you want to remember are these fish are going to be looking up a lot more now. They're going to be top water feeding on the mayflies. That also means the bait fish are going to be up feeding on the mayflies as well, and other bugs that are hatching. There's now that this water's warming up into the 60s, you're going to see a lot of other bugs hatching out there. Those little gnats. There'll be lots of different aquatic invertebrates getting more active and hatching, so you're going to see a lot more surface activity. Other baits like the Northland marabou jigs, any other kind of slow falling baits. So you're not just going to want to fish top water baits like poppars and different spooks and things like that, but slower falling baits that are going to stay in that higher part of the water table, where these fish are either focusing or they're just staying, they're just up higher to begin with, or that they're focusing their attention on that surface. So you're going to want to keep some baits higher up there if you're not picking them up down low. The other thing with that clear, what you want to pay attention to too, is kind of think like a fish, right? So if that water does get really clear, you can kind of slide out deeper on these fish to make yourself a little less conspicuous out there, and then you can get away with a lot more out in that deeper water. There may be a lot of fish in shallow, and they may be surface feeding, but it doesn't do you much good if you can't get close to them with your presentations to catch those fish. So sometimes you got to give up maybe where the higher concentrations of fish are and slide out a little bit deeper so that you're less conspicuous and you can present your bait to those fish more effectively, okay? And so when they're up higher in that water column, it makes it even more important, because if they're up there, they can see you easier. You can see them easier. They can see you easier too. And when fish get, spooked, they get skittish and they don't bite as well. So I guess that's all I'm going to say about the smallies. As far as where they are in the spawn right now, with the crazy weather we've had, you still got some pre-spawn fish, although not nearly as many. Although one of our guys, Hayden, did prove that there are still some spawning fish out there, and I've heard it from multiple guides that have come in the store as well that are using live scope and everything. They're still seeing a lot of fish on beds, but definitely not as many as we saw earlier in the season. There's a lot more post-spawn fish. There's smaller males that are guarding right now. So we are finishing up that spawn, and over the next several days, I would imagine most of the spawning will be done, although there's going to be some late spawners going well into the month, just with the different water temperatures we have around the lake. So I guess my advice to you is, if you are a dedicated bed fisherman and you don't see fish in one area where you are, move a little bit and find another pocket, and you're probably going to find a different pocket of fish that are maybe in a different stage of the spawn, just based on the variability, the extreme variability that we had this year with the water temps out there on the lake. So talking about the mayflies a little bit more, we're going to talk about the perch. Same thing, go to those soft bottom areas. Places like out near the shipping channel right now, out by the St. Clair Light, over by the dumping grounds, over in those areas like the northeast corner where that weed growth gets heavy. All those softer bottom areas where these mayflies are going to hatch are going to start to congregate these perch if they already haven't. There are a lot of guys that are still going all the way over to Canada, over by the Bell River Hump. and catching a lot of fish over there. Haven't heard as much over by the weather buoy, but I think that's just more been about the weather more than anything else. Guys weren't running all the way over there. Over these next several days, we ought to get a lot more reports from a lot of different people in many different parts of the lake regarding the perch bite and a lot of other species as well too, just because guys are going to actually get out and fish now. But those would be key areas that I would focus on for perch. Those flats over there by the mouth of the South Channel that straddle that Canadian line over there should be good as well now at this time of the year. And there's going to be fish around the shoreline too. With these mayflies, this is one of the times of the year that I like to go and shore fish, and I'll use flies sometimes at this time of the year when the mayflies really stack up along the shoreline. We'll get a really good topwater bite going in right tight against the shoreline too. So, but that's more of that's something you really have to take advantage of from the shore, not really from fishing from boats. Panfish bite's going to get going as well too. There's a lot of bluegills and pumpkin seeds that have been waiting to spawn, and I guess they're starting to spawn again is what I heard. They were on beds, and just like the bass, they got off. So that's going to get going more and more. I'm getting reports from guys that are fishing in the canals and the different marinas, mostly guys that have boats in those marinas as far as access goes, but that bluegill and sunfish bite has really picked up big time. So if you got a favorite spot in and around Lake St. Clair from shore, you might want to check it out now, because the combination of those fish spawning and the mayfly hatch, man, that could make it really, really good. And the weed growth is not too high yet. And so a lot of times at this time of the year, the weeds are up and it makes it tough. But the weeds are pretty far behind this year, so it should make fishing from shore a lot easier than what it normally is. Now, walleye. I'm going to say a couple of different things about the walleye fishing right now. I was talking about the weed growth in those soft bottom areas, and my buddy Isaac was out and he was casting along those weed lines out there, and he got some dandies out there casting, and just out by himself. I think he had like 15 or 20 fish each time he went out, and he was casting the different weed lines. That also works on rock structure out here on this lake, and a lot of times you'll have a composite of both. You'll have pockets of weeds in and around that rock structure, and that's what you really want to key on. You can anchor up or spot lock on those areas. I prefer to anchor for like just pinpoint location. It doesn't hurt to throw out a marker buoy onto those edges, onto those areas when you're casting to them, and then you know exactly what your bait's doing, especially if you don't have any of that fancy live scope. But dropping a very small marker, and a lot of times I'll just use a 1 liter pop bottle with a sinker on it and just drop it literally right down on a weed line, or you can drop a couple of them on a weed line, anchor up, and then you can cast with pinpoint accuracy to that location, or you could fish a slip bobber down along those edges as well too. But it's a great way to catch fish out there. It's kind of like what I was talking about last week with Chubb and his, using his forward-facing sonar to cast to these walleyes. It's the same kind of deal when you're dropping these marker buoys out there onto those areas, in a way, as far as seeing the structure anyways. One of the other ways that Jordan is intending to charter out here on the lake, I guess it just reminded me of that, is he's also going to be chartering up there on the St. Clair River whipping. And I'm not sure if there's many charter captains right now that are actually guiding or chartering doing that technique called whipping, which basically it's a real short rod that they use, 4-foot rod. We actually make one specifically for that, and we carry them at the store. But they drop a sinker and like a 3-way rig back with a couple of different baits attached to it. The bait's usually like a combination of a bomber, like a number 11 floating Rapala, and then a lot of times what they call a pencil plug, which is a bait that has very limited action. And they drop it back in the river, and they work the flats by slowly dropping that line back, mostly done at night or late evening, and then they whip, they pull those baits forward, and then they drop them back, and those fish just crush those baits. So I guess if you want to learn more about whipping, get a hold of Jordan at Big Chub's Charters. And if you need to, I know he's on Facebook, but if you need to get a hold of him, I'm sure we can put you in touch with him. But anyways, he is chartering out there whipping, and whipping is producing a ton of fish right now. So they're still getting fish jigging up there. They're also getting fish running bottom bouncers and night crawler harnesses. So St. Clair River is still on fire for walleyes. Not getting a lot of reports out here from the lake on the walleyes, but I do know guys are running bottom bouncers out there and are catching them. Again, you're going to want to fish that off-colored water and key on that. And if that's not working, then just slide out deeper. That shipping channel also ought to get really going out there on the walleyes as well, up there by the mouth of the South Channel. And then historically, that northeast corner of the dump this time of the year gets going really good as well with those weeds coming up over there in that corner. So that's the walleye for the report. Let's see. Guys like Garrett Samsel, that are out there all the time. They make it look so easy, taking limits of walleyes in the morning and then getting smallies in the afternoon. He does it very consistently, and they just make it look so easy. I'm doing that, but they're consistently catching fish out there to prove that you can do both in one day on St. Clair. I guess I got another note here. Sometimes I'm reading notes, guys, and a lot of times I'm just going off the cuff, but there's a couple of things I wanted to talk about, especially with the smallmouth bite. I've been seeing guys posting using like Kitex, and they're using the bigger Kitex 3.8s. And historically, big baits like that out here, or the bigger baits out here on St. Clair, have done really well. But I can tell you that if you are still throwing those bigger baits, you might want to try downsizing a little bit. With the Kitex, throwing those 2.8s and 3.3s have been working a lot better. Whether it's just clear water, or whether it's fishing pressure, or whether it's pressure from the forward-facing sonar, or all of the above, I don't know. All I can tell you is that throwing those smaller baits is working better. Same thing goes for that Crush City Mare in that 2.5 and that 3-inch size. Everything seems like it's downsizing on these smallies. And for me, going back to my teenage years out here on the lake, that's all we ever threw was smaller stuff. So we never threw anything as big as like a Kitech, a 3.8 or a 4.3. Everything was down around that 2 to 3 inch range. So, maybe it's like clothing and stuff. What comes in style and changes and goes out of style, and then it comes back again. I don't know. Maybe that's like the style for the fish. But I'm thinking it's probably more has to do with pressure in the environment out there for them. But definitely, if you've been fishing big stuff, try downsizing, and I think you'll do a lot better. Guys are still catching fish on drop shot rigs and other presentations out there. But just bear in mind what I was talking about with that water cleaning up. If you are fishing drop shot rigs and things like that and fishing down near the bottom, or you're fishing in relatively shallow water and like 7, 8, 9, 10 feet, if you're seeing the bottom and you're drop shotting, you're probably going to be catching a lot of small fish. If you want to use that presentation, you're going to probably want to slide out a little bit deeper so that you cannot see the bottom and the fish can't see you. I think you're going to find you're going to be a lot more successful with those presentations out here on the lake. And if you're still having trouble, we've got leeches and we got big goldens at the store too. And we had guys out there today that I think they went through like 11 dozen golden shiners fishing for bass out there between 2 or 3 guys. So that'll tell you how many fish they caught fishing, live bait for them. And I know a lot of you guys would definitely don't want to fish live bait for the bass, and that's fine too. But I'm just saying, if you want to go out there and have success and you want to take some kids out and make sure they catch fish, maybe take a couple of dozen goldens with you, and it'll make that fishless water get fishy really fast. See, I'm trying to think if we got anything else in the report this week. We are a Mega Bass dealer now. We just finally became a Mega Bass dealer, so we've got a pretty good selection of the top baits out here on St. Clair. Got great weather ahead, guys. Get out, take advantage of it. Looks like it's going to be a really good week ahead of us. Mayfly hatch, warming temps, relatively light winds, sunshine, and great fishing out on Lake St. Clair. Hey gang, if you like our content, hit the little subscribe button and the bell icon, and you'll be notified as soon as we put out new stuff.